Hey everyone, this is Pam Bam Richard presenting to you AC Radio at www.abyssalchronicles.com, where Tales is our life. This episode is for Sunday, September 2nd, 2018, as I'm joined here by AC Radio co-host Dimension Slip, as we talk about some recent happenings within the Tales of franchise, both in Japan and outside of Japan. So, the first thing that we'll be talking about is the Tales of the Abyss licensing by Funimation. Well, we knew that they licensed it for quite some time, since Bandai Entertainment had the license for it around 2011, and then that company in itself is a subsidiary of Bandai Namco, particularly for their anime localizations, and since that particular subsidiary company became defunct in 2013, a bunch of companies were like straight up picking up all their shows right away, and Funimation picked up the Tales of the Abyss anime around 2013, and thereafter they announced just recently, a couple weeks ago, that they will be releasing the entire anime series on November 27th, 2018 on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital download. There's a lot to this that I personally like, because I remembered when Bandai Entertainment had their initial localization back then, and the price for that, for their DVD cases, like their DVD releases, I think it was about maybe like 7 or 8 episodes per DVD, and it was around like, say, $50.
For the whole thing, or just like one DVD?
One DVD.
Oh,
There's
gosh,
just like...
that's so expensive, man.
Yeah, exactly. It was very expensive, and it's kind of what deterred me from getting the official localization back then. But now that Funimation is handling the release, I'm very glad, because Funimation is very generous with their pricing for anime shows. So I'm happy that they are going to be releasing it with the subtitled. This is probably going to be the same subtitles as Bandai's release, but the fact of the matter is it's going to be available in all 3 popular formats, and at the same time it's going to be very inexpensive compared to other, the previous release of this show back in 2011.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. Like, I mean, on my end, because it doesn't have everything that the Japanese Blu-ray has, but the fact that it's being released in such a manner abroad, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's also nice too, because if I recall correctly, we're nearing the 10th anniversary of this anime show itself as well, because I believe it came out around 2008. I might be a little bit off by a year, but it feels like it's been at least 10 years old, because I remembered working on the fan sub for that back in 2007 or 2008, just trying to get it all released and whatnot. But yeah, it was, it's nice because, like, I personally did not watch the entire show from start to finish, so it does give me a reason to sort of, like, give it a watch, and it's also, solid as well, because their Funimation is bouncing off of, the Zestiria The Cross release, so it's kind of cool to see them, like, jumping from there to, timing-wise, releasing Tales of the Abyss thereafter. So, out of curiosity, what did you think about the adaptation of Tales of the Abyss? I presume did you watch the anime?
Of course.
So,
is that even an actual question? But anyway, yes. Like, as far as anime adaptations go, I think they adapted the story pretty well. I mean, of course, anime adaptations will tend to, not have everything. But as far as things go, I think it's pretty good. I enjoyed watching it, and I have a friend who has never played the game but she only watched the anime. He also really enjoyed it, so I think that's pretty nice. So it's like, even if you haven't played the game, you can still get into the series somehow, or the story of Abyss, by just watching the anime. I think that's a really nice way to get people into the thing. Like, hey, maybe they might want to play the game after watching the anime, which is actually what happened with my friend, because he started on the game after watching the anime, although that's partly because I kept on poking her to do so. But anyway, yeah.
Right, and I think like that's also very indicative as to how like anime shows like if I recall correctly, that was also the same reaction that some folks had when Tales of Zestiria the Cross was being featured on Funimation and Daisuki.net. And a part of that comes to mind is that people really wanted to play Zestiria when that game, well, when that show was still going and all that. So that's one benefit that the anime does have, that's for sure. And something that also comes to mind too is that there is some intriguing feedback within the animation style itself because it was animated by Sunrise, if I recall correctly.
Oh yes. Yeah, in terms of like the style, like I wish they stuck to something a little more closer to what the game had, like what production IG had for the cutscenes, or because Sunrise style was really very different, and they kind of altered a little how the characters look, and they added more to the confusion about, hey, what color am I gonna use for this particular person? Because the anime, I mean the game itself was already very confusing about that. The cutscenes were also confusing about that, and then you have this third thing, the anime, and it's just like if I were to name an example, Guy, like his eyes keep on changing color depending on what medium you check. And on a more easy to see type of deal, like Jade, like his hair is kind of shorter in the anime, and his face is kind of different too. That sort of deal.
You do bring up a good point with regards to the whole color palette, because that was something that I noticed way back in 2008 as well when they were showing teaser images. I've noticed that there was something that felt a little bit off about it, but overall, when I saw it in motion, I didn't mind it too much at the end of the day for myself personally. So it is nice to see different companies take on Tales of, because of how familiar we are with the production IG at the time and now Ufotable. So I welcome it, but yeah, I can see it sort of like turning some people off who are familiarized with the more common companies that do handle Tales of. But for myself, I don't mind too much of that animation style personally.
Yeah, on my end, it won't really stop me from watching the thing. It's just like something nitpicky on my end. Like overall, I still enjoy the anime. The sort of deal.
Right, and for myself, I'm probably going to be picking this up when it comes out, most likely on Blu-ray to sort of complete my minor Tales of official localized anime or movie releases collection, and essentially I'll see if I could give it a watch. It is, for myself, it is unfortunate that it's subbed only and not dubbed, because they've had the license. Go on.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, because when I saw it was just like they're gonna put subs and no dub. It was kind of sad, because it would have been interesting to hear the take of the English voice cast for the anime.
Yeah, and my only speculation is that it might be because of like funding and costs. I don't know how well Tales of Hysteria the Cross supported Funimation with regards to the sales for its physical release or digital releases, but I know that some of the voice actors might be down for it, because I recall a couple years ago at during Flamzeron's podcast, Mizuho BBS podcast, there was an interview with Yuri Lowenthal, and we did manage to speak with him and ask him about the anime, and he said that there was some interest with regards to the cast, bringing the cast together to sort of like dub that show again. So the interest is still there, but I guess like this is just purely speculation. It might just be due to like funding at the end of the day, which is unfortunate, but such is the way of things when it comes to dealing with the localized tales of media in a sense, at least as far as I can tell, observation wise. So but I mean, it's not really too much of a deal breaker for me, but it would have been nice considering how long that they had the license for at the end of the day. But in the future, things that I could sort of like see regarding this release, if it does go well, maybe there might be some more releases, like retroactive releases in the future. Like, say for example, people have brought up like the Tales of Symphonia OVA as well as being a potential release, and if the Tales of the Abyss anime does sell well, that might be something that we could see in the future. I mean, I can see it being a possibility, but either or, it'll be coming out November 27th, and I'm definitely going to be looking into picking that up personally. Next up on the docket here, we have, we were supposed to talk about this last weekend, but it's the Sword Art Online collaboration with Tales of the Rays, and the things that come to mind with that collaboration, it did end about a couple days ago, but generally speaking, Tales of the Rays and the Sword Art Online Memory Defrag app, they both collaborated with each other and have like certain characters being featured on both platforms. So in Tales of the Rays, we had Kirito and Asuna being revealed as playable characters, as well with costumes for Melina, Rita, and Colette for some of the other characters featured in that show. Likewise, for Sword Art Online Memory Defrag, we had Soray and Mila show up, as well with a bunch of main characters dressing up as several of the Tales of characters, such as Kirito as Judas, Asuna as Velvet, and we also have costumes for Alicia, Mila, and Meredy as well. Overall, like, when it comes to the integration in Tales of the Rays, it was very cool to see, personally speaking, because a lot of the times when we see collaborations with Tales of, if it's not like things that you would see in Tales of Asteria or Tales of Link, where you don't see them in like the linear motion battle system, there were some games prior that had the linear motion battle system for other franchises, like Sergeant Frog and Kamen Rider, if I recall correctly, on the DS and 3DS family of games. And that was cool in its own right because it utilizes the linear motion battle system. So it's nice to see that expanded in like other characters who aren't in the Tales of franchise and how they're well integrated in there. And I personally liked how both Kirito and Asuna played in Tales of the Rays, and Asuna specifically because if I recall, like, she uses a rapier, and not that many Tales of characters like solely devote themselves to that particular weapon type. The only character that really comes to mind is Richard, but Richard excels both in rapier arts and spells, but his rapier arts are more so like familiar Tales of arts that we've seen in the past, like Sword Rain, or I don't know if he has Sonic Thrust, but they're all just like thrust arts that we've seen familiarized in previous Tales of games. So to see Asuna sort of like go all out and expand with her rapier arts and whatnot, it kind of makes me wonder, like, maybe we could see a character in the future who can have like dedicated arts for a rapier based weapon type. And I don't know, they're like, that kind of like thing sort of like interests me to see if they could like sort of expand on that in the future.
I see. On my end, I didn't actually play through the collab that much. Like, I just left most of the characters on auto, so I didn't really get to tell how they played. But I always find the collabs pretty interesting, and in the sense of seeing what they put in a game. Like, I think that the collab was a good idea. I mean, it wasn't a bad idea in itself, even if, like, for the tail side, I think the character choices were a little weird, and the costume choices were, yeah, definitely strange in my opinion. Like, just like Rita in Sinon's costume was just like, the colors were so bad. and Colette in Yuki's costume was also kind of weird, and I'm not sure if you were able to see or find out, because one thing I was curious about but never followed through was how did they have like Colette use the sword or whatever in the collab, because Colette doesn't use a sword.
If I recall correctly, she has a particular weapon from the collab that allows her to materialize a sword during her art. So that's like similar to how Rita has it, and I don't know if Melina had it herself, but yeah, Rita also had a particular weapon that allowed her to like materialize the gun out of nowhere for her too.
I see. But I think one thing that was impressive about this collab is I'm not sure if it held true for the rest of the cutscenes because I had the sound muted for the rest of the cutscenes, but the prologue cutscene was voiced, which never happened for any of the previous collabs.
Yeah, I with regards to the other cutscenes, I don't think they were voiced afterwards, but for the prologue, yeah, they definitely were. So
Yeah, that was a really interesting choice, and I do wish they do more of that in the future, like voice more of the collabs. Yeah.
yeah, so regarding the collab particularly, did you happen to be exposed to Sword Art Online prior to this collaboration?
Oh yes, like I watched the anime and I read all the novels up to volume 8. So yeah, I'm quite familiar with the series.
All right, so what did you think about like because I wasn't really too much into Sword Art Online prior to this collaboration, and when I saw the reaction online, um, there were fairly numerous reactions that were both negative and very vocal
Oh,
about it as well,
I
which I
s-
felt was like kind of intriguing at the very least.
Sword Art Online is very divisive in that sense because it's like there's this half that I'm not sure if it's even half, but there's this part of the internet that loves it. There's another part that hates it so much. And um on my end, like if I were to venture an opinion, the story was sort of okay in the Aincrad arc. Like that's the first arc for Sword Art Online, the first 2 volumes. I mean, it isn't super special, but I did enjoy reading it and um, stuff. But I was the next arc kind of made me go, what the heck? So it wasn't one. It wasn't one of my favorite arcs. I didn't really like it so much. The next arc, Gun Gale Online, the one where Sinon comes from, is another. I actually enjoyed that again, but yeah, I think part of the reason why people both there's like a part there's people who like it, there's people who hate it. It's because of Kirito, the main character, because um, mostly because he's kind of a Gary Stu. I mean, quite frankly, he's a Gary Stu.
um, I I was very amused because I also asked some people that I know about Sword Art Online, collaborating with Tales of, and they actually heard about that too, and I was like very intrigued because like usually they don't really Tales news barely ever reaches them, and that's sort of like the effectiveness to collaborations in general because of how much it can get a bit of a widespread attention because of how popular it could be in a sense. But regarding the show itself, I actually had a friend of mine who was starting to get into it literally last week and like, oh, okay, I'll watch some episodes with you. So I tried a couple episodes and it was okay. It's not really my cup of tea personally. I just felt that for myself, for the 4 episodes that I watched, the pacing felt a little bit stilted for me. It's not really my cup of tea with that sort of pacing. And regarding Kirito, I can sort of like understand the assessment of him being a bit of a Gary Stew, but at the same time, it was very amusing after the end of the second episode where um, like after a certain thing happens, he suddenly just like owns up to like the negative feedback that he was getting from the people he was with. I'm like, this is our hero. I'm like, I was so
Yeah,
confused by that particular episode. And I was like, what the heck? Um, like when I asked my other friends about the show, they felt like they either were okay with it or they really liked it. So when I saw a lot of the negative response online, and all that, I was very intrigued, and to sort of like hear the feedback as to why that is. Yeah, that's I I don't know if I would be watching it more, but it does. I would definitely keep that in mind for the future.
Yep, because also like every girl kind of just falls for him too. That's another point.
Ah,
Like they sort of like end up having a mini crush on him one way or another. So it's kind of off-putting, I guess, for some people. On my end, I just don't really care that much. But I mean, I can see why people would dislike Sword Art Online. On my end, I'm just like, it's okay, but yeah, it's not like the best thing I've ever seen in my life or something like that.
I see, I see. And to even go like further from that, like how I was talking previously about how effective collaborations are because of how much of a reach that they have, and honestly, it's like it's a good exposure for like those who want to be interested in who want to like have themselves open to like the other part of the series. So like one game that comes to mind that reminds me of this is Project Cross Zone, and that game had like a ton of franchises crossing over. We had Tales of, we had Street Fighter, we had like Resonance of Fate and like Space Channel. There were like a ton of RPGs and fighting games that were like crossing over in that game. And the beauty of that is that you're exposing other people who aren't familiar with those franchises. Like you give them like a small introduction into their worlds. And it kind of reminds me of like how like with Project Cross Zone, that game had representatives from Resonance of Fate like Zephyr, Lian, and Vacheron. And because of how like they use their guns and their like synchronization between each other, their synergy, like it made me look into the game, and I was like, huh, this might be a game that I would like to try out. And then when I finally started to play it, I'm like, yeah, this game is pretty solid with this battle system and how like the guns all like collaborate with each other and whatnot. And like I'm never negative when it comes to collaborations because it shows just how that potential of the effectiveness in collaborations are because of how it can open both sides to opening up to the other part of the franchise that they're collaborating with. So it's always nice to see collaborations occur, and to sort of like go further into collaborations in general. What kind of collaborations would you like to see go with the Tales of franchise?
Oh, on my end, I actually already got my wish, to be honest. Like, because one thing I've always wanted to see ever since I got into the series was like a Valkyrie profile collaboration. So we basically got the closest thing to it, which is, you know, the collaboration before that, which was Valkyrie Anatomia. So that was kind of like one of the taglines for that collaboration was like it was called the Dream Collab, and yeah, it definitely was the dream collaboration for me because it kind of like in a way hit all my expectations in a sense. Like it was admittedly very low budget in the sense that they didn't even really bother yeah, with making so much, like, let's say, sprite icons for Lenneth, and they didn't even make any for Lizard because they just had him possess Jade for that collab. But yeah, um, but yeah, it made me really happy because they basically ran away with the SAO joke that made me want a collab in the first place. Because Lenneth and Rain share a voice actor, and Lizard and Jade also share a voice actor. And they kind of just ran away with it in the collab, like having their voice actor counterparts possess their voice actor counterparts in Tales, or something like that. So
I see, I see. And what exactly is Valkyria Profile all about? Because I remember catching like the tail end of that event, and I did manage to like pick up the exclusive unit for it, but I don't really know too much about that game. So what is it like generally like in terms of gameplay and plot? Out of curiosity.
in terms of plot, basically, like for the first game, like I actually haven't played the mobile game because I just don't have so much time to dedicate too many mobile games, but for Valkyrie Profile Lenneth, the first one on the PlayStation, it's basically you get to play a Valkyrie whose name isn't known until later, but it's Lenneth. She what they call this? She basically kind of recruits souls to into this into Valhalla, so they can something like that. So what they call this? But oh god, it's been a while. The overall plot of the thing is, so the souls here are like slain people, so they're dead, and she she needs to collect those souls for Ragnarok, that sort of deal. And she also trains them to like fight because you know you have to level up somehow in the game. In terms of, I think one noteworthy thing coming from a Tales background would be the music, because it's also by Motoi Sakuraba. So you're gonna notice a lot of similarities in the music between Valkyrie Profile and Tales, because he uses the same style for them. Like, I'm not sure if you heard the collab music for Valkyrie Anatomia event. I think it was a mash of a Fantasia theme and a Valkyrie Profile theme, and it was hard to tell which part was the Fantasia theme and the Valkyrie Profile BGM. So it's like, yeah, that sort of deal.
Huh. All right. Okay, cool. So it's so like I'm looking further into it, and it also seems to be like turn-based combat as well.
Yes. For it's much simpler in the PlayStation version. Like you just press a button to like get your character to attack, but there is like a certain timing to it because you'd want to do a combo, that sort of deal. So even though it's turn-based, there's like aspects of it that are real time in a sense, the sort of thing. And like the field, you have to move Lenneth around the they call this the maps, and the controls there are different because it plays like a platformer outside of battle.
All right. Okay, cool. So, yeah, it looks like it was also developed by Tri-Ace, who also their history with Tales is very amusing to say the least, and considering how they also developed Star Ocean and all that. It also reminds me as to the question of the week, because like for myself personally, I'm this question of like this thought about like collaborations never really crossed my mind personally. The most obvious one being Super Smash Brothers, but we kind of already have that with the Lloyd Me costume. But I can see people wanting more. But we'll see what happens in the future. But with that aside, the other one that does come to mind is Star Ocean, that is also developed by Tri-Ace, and I don't know if you know about the history between Tri-Ace and Bandai Namco Tales Studios, because back in the day when Tales of Fantasia was being developed by Wolf Team was is the team that Bandai Namco had established to create Tales of Fantasia. The company sort of split off after that game, and those particular employees within Wolf Team sort of like established their own company and made Star Ocean, and looks like they also did Valkyrie Profile and as well Resonance of Fate. So to sort of like see them already have a collaboration between Tri-Ace based game is already like nice to see in that sense, and it kind of makes me curious to see if they would ever use that as a platform to sort of like transfer over to Star Ocean, because
Yeah.
that's always been like the big one. I remember back in 2005 when people were talking about, oh, Star Ocean versus Tales of Symphonia. People were like saying, oh, Lloyd owns Fate, or Fate owns Lloyd, or some weird things like that back in the day. And it's sort of like as a bit of an establishment about the relationship between those two. When it also comes to collaborations, some series that were brought up due to the question of the week, people have brought up Fire Emblem, Xenoblade, Dot Hack, Persona, and Final Fantasy, and those are all some pretty valid choices as well. But besides Dot Hack, I can see like the other four being a bit of a quite requires a lot of resources in order to like proclaim a collaboration with.
Yeah. Like on my end, I'm just really glad we got that Valkyrie profile collaboration. Like, oh, I forgot to mention like one other motivation I had was so we all, it's technically not a spoiler. Like we know Jade has the Necromancer title, and that's what it's called in game. So Lizard, his same voice actor as in Japanese, like Lizard is also called a Necromancer. And every time I see Lizard, I keep on getting the impression that this is Jade if he were a little more batshit insane. So
Really?
yeah.
If it weren't for the fact that I have a huge backlog, I might look into that game myself. But that does sound very intriguing to look into. With that in mind as well, Tales of the Stage successor to Lorelei's Power, the emotional act did occur recently at around August 22nd to 26th, and essentially that was announced during Tales Fest a couple months ago. And Dimension Slip, you did go to how many times did you go, out of curiosity?
3.
So is there anything that you'd like to share between those three times you've gone?
Oh gosh. You know, at first during my third showing, I was like, I'm glad I'm done watching the 3 because there wasn't really much differences among the 3 showings. But you know, the next day I was like, boy, I want to watch it again. But what they call this? I really enjoyed it. And as far as like adaptations go, it really is an Ash stage play. So if you really love Ash, you're gonna love the stage play a lot because he's like the main character of the thing. And in terms of like atmosphere for me, it felt a little like going to Tales Fest again in a sense. In the sense of like there's really nothing beating actually seeing it live because you get to see the whole stage and whatever everyone was up to, and the fact that you're like surrounded by Abyss fans is just a really amazing feeling because you can see like some of the people in the audience like get teary-eyed in certain parts, even though on my end I didn't really get that teary-eyed except for the first showing I went to where I got a little teary-eyed, but I didn't fall for it again like the second showing because yeah, I was on my guard already. Like I know this was gonna happen, but yeah, in terms of like adaptation wise, they really cut a lot of parts because it was just like a 2-hour performance, and Abyss is like 100 hours plus of gameplay and story. So it's like, good luck condensing that into 2 hours. But as far as what they included there, I'm satisfied with how they portrayed it and like with the ending, like how they handled it. Like I'm glad they preserved the ambiguity for the ending because they kind of didn't do as much of a good job in last year's stage play, because last year's stage play it was so obvious who returned, but for what do you call this year it was more ambiguous. Can't really tell who returned, that sort of deal.
All right. So, regarding the adaptation and whatnot, when you mentioned how like it does cut out a lot, do you think like for somebody who hasn't exposed themselves to Tales of the Abyss, if they were to watch it for the first time, would they actually be still engrossed in like the general parts as to how the story was presented in a sense, or is it just like made for the fans?
Honestly, I feel like it's more made for the fans. I think it might be a little confusing for the newcomer because they don't really explain the locations that much. I think it's more like a tribute to the fans more than a way to entice newcomers into like checking out the series.
Did they mention when they be making like when the final part of that show is going to take place, or is that still sort of like up in the air at this time?
That's kind of up in the air because next week they're gonna have their show in Osaka, like from September 8 to 9. So I think if they have some sort of news as to what comes after this, like if there's gonna be another Abyss stage play or if they're gonna move on to another series, I think that will come during the last day of the Osaka showing, which is why I'm admittedly tempted to go and watch it in Osaka, but it's kind of expensive since I live in Tokyo, so it's like just a huge consideration on my end rather than something I'm sure of doing. And for personal reasons, I'm leaning towards no, but who knows?
Right, I forgot that the show was also being shown again, like in Osaka from September 8th to 9th. So we'll probably be expecting more of an announcement as to what will happen for the final part of that show in the future. But it was nice to know that you had a good time there and you've caused a bit of a standing ovation in one of your outings there as well. So with that said, this has been a very news-heavy sort of like episode in a sense. So with regards to plugs, you can feel free to follow me on Twitter. I just recently finished Tales of Berseria recently, so you might be expecting a topic like that explored in the near future, hopefully. Are there any plugs that you'd like to share, Slip?
Nothing really, like just the usual, like I'm on Tumblr, I'm on Twitter under Dimension Slip, so.
Yeah, you've got some more merchandise that you've gotten from Tales of the Stage as well, correct?
Yes, but I'm not selling. I'm not really selling those. I'm mostly like trying to trade them off. But I am selling some, like the trading cards, because I made a dubious decision of getting too much of them. But yeah, if you want some of the karaoke cards, I have a stash with me, so feel free to hit me up for that. And yeah, I'm also like probably gonna go back to the Vesperia Animate Cafe in the near future because it's about to end soon. So I can also pick up stuff from it if ever.
And you're also going to the Tales of Vesperia anniversary party event too, correct?
Yep, because SAO parties are a lot of fun. Oh gosh, speaking of the party, I feel lucky I got a ticket because right now it's really expensive because they ran out like almost immediately, according to my friend. Like as soon as general sales opened, it sold out in a matter of minutes, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah. And like scalpers right now are driving the price pretty high. Like the ticket was just around like under 10,000 yen. But right now, if you're going to check like secondhand sites, it's like 30,000 yen.
Oh, jeez, that's like scalpers. Gotta love them, am I right?
Yes, and people are buying them.
Yeah.
That's how much people love Vesperia, I guess.
All right, so if you want any particular merchandise from there, we have that on abyssalchronicles.com, and I'm sure if you give Slip a shout, if you arrange some things, she might be able to get some for you, more or less.
Yep.
All right, and with that said, for those who have tuned in, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, take care.